the XR650R.
My Supermoto project that I've been working on for the last, too long. When did we start this? Took this bike from being a fairly rough XR. Basically left no stone untouched, taking it into a street Supermoto. We'll talk a little bit about the build, the time it took, do a list of the top 10 most expensive parts, as well as talk about the overall prices in general. Because I know that's something you guys have been asking for a lot. In my last videos, I asked if anybody had any guesses, and those guesses were nowhere near close. You guys are gonna be so mad at me when you find out how much money's in this thing. Yeah, y'all are gonna give me a hard time for it. It's a good chunk of change. But you know, there's a lot of sponsored parts in it. There's a lot of this and that. We'll get into that here in just a second. The bike is kind of dirty right now. It got like a quick once over hose off right before making this video. Rode it around, got it somewhat dirty. And as some of you guys know who follow me on the social medias, Instagram, my appendix, about 2 weeks ago I had to get removed, emergency surgery. I think all appendix surgeries are an emergency surgery. I was actually out riding this bike literally hours before I had to go to the hospital. Luckily I had come home, and luckily my wife was like, no, you need to go to the hospital, because I was just gonna be stubborn and die. Pretty good right now, I feel a lot better. I'm not 100% yet, so I didn't get down and scrub it, you know, like I normally would. It was kind of a stand up and hose it from a distance. So I actually bought this bike 11 months ago, last September. And it's been finished for actually almost 2 months now. 8-9 months to finish the whole thing, start to finish. Obviously that's a pretty long time. Supermoto build, even of this intensity that we did, should not take that long. Y'all definitely gave me a hard time about how long it took, and it was fair. First of all, we thought we had a big sponsor on board at the beginning. For those of you guys who saw the ZX6R build I did last year, we had J&P Cycles sponsor the whole thing front to back. That was basically what we were gonna have for this. Not with J&P though, but with another company. They kind of just flaked out on us. It sucked. They actually ended up working with another moto guy on YouTube to do some other build. Not to sound shallow or anything, but I totally kept up with how many views that build got and where that went, and sucks to suck, idiots. Should have stuck with me. I was Moto Pilot, by the way, for you guys on Patreon. That was Tucker. It used to be part of Tucker Rocky. Basically strung me along for a while, saying they were gonna sponsor this build and just didn't. That was a big waste of time. On top of that though, there was a lot of stuff just waiting for parts to show up for this thing. Race Tech took like a month and a half to send out the parts to this thing, to the suspension shop. No idea why it would take that long, but there was a lot of little things like that along the way. Filming and editing these things takes a lot longer than just simply turning the wrenches. And I think finally, of course, bought a house, moved, and had a kid in the time that this build happened. So I have been fairly busy in my own personal life as well. But normally a build like this, even to this degree, shouldn't take that long. A lot of circumstances all working against me. Once we found out we didn't have a big sponsor on board, I basically made a list of all the parts I wanted for the bike, then wrote down the provider for those parts that I thought fitted the best, and then basically went around and started making phone calls. And I actually got a really great amount of support from the sponsors for this build. I think almost 90% of the parts on this bike were the first choice parts I wanted for it. I didn't, ask for any money for any of these parts. I just asked for the parts. I didn't promise to say anything about them nice, or that's just because this is really a passionate build for me. This is a bike I always wanted, and I absolutely love the way it came out. But Jake, how much money is into it? Some of that money came from me, like the initial buy of the bike, as well as a handful of parts, particularly a lot of the small parts. A lot of it was supported by y'all for buying those Big Red Pig shirts, still available. And of course, the biggest contributor to this thing was the sponsors themselves. No particular order, we got Two Bros Racing, Baja Designs, Supermoto, Righteous Stunt Clutch, Warp 9 Racing, Continental Tires, Moto Master Brakes, Slide Moto, Adventure Moto, Electron Fuel Systems, We Code It, and RM Stator. That's a lot of people that hooked it up. Not only did they provide us with parts, most of them provided us with their flagship item, which again is one of the reasons you're gonna see this price way up there. We also know there's about $1,000 of parts that we originally had for this thing that did not end up on the build, and I'll explain that. The bike itself, $2,200. And honestly, it was probably about $500–600 more than it should have been. Parts themselves, $9,427, meaning the grand total for this bike is $11,627. Basically the MSRP of a 2019 KTM 790 SMCR. $11,000, 2001, it's kickstart only, carbureted. Well, how did this happen? So I've got a whole list of the parts in order, and I'll kind of flash that across the screen now so you can pause that and take a closer look if you'd like. I'm honestly pretty sure there's a handful of parts we've forgotten in there. I think also it's good to note right off the bat, you do not need to spend that much money to build a Supermoto, not even an XR650R Supermoto. We just bought one that was so bad, and then we took it so far the other direction. That's why a lot of that stuff came in there. My brother warned me right at the beginning. He said, I'm just afraid you're gonna get nickeled and dime buying all the little things that this thing is missing, that it needs. And that is a big part of it. It's crazy how many items are in there that are like sub $200, sub $100, and they just add up. You don't always think about them too when you're trying to buy the stuff for this thing, and you're like, oh yeah, that's all worn out, that's beat up, this is missing, that's missing. But to be fair, almost all those parts were really, really garbage. There's so many things on here that were just tore up, missing. The missing stuff's crazy, where you have to just go out and buy an OEM part that you think, nobody's ever buying this part. This is a part that doesn't get worn out. The only reason you'd buy it is because at some point somebody took it off and didn't put it back on. I don't know why. This thing also just had rash on it everywhere. After buying this bike, I even got several messages from people saying they've personally seen this bike crash before I had it. But let's talk about the top 10 most expensive things on this bike, in my opinion, on whether or not I think it's worth it or not. The answers might surprise you. For number 10, we coated. Powder coated the clutch cover, the stator cover, the oil pump cover, and the sprocket cover. Is it purely cosmetic? Yes. But if you're really gonna go to this level and leave those old busted up covers on there that were all tore up, that would have been pretty silly. Be sure to hit them up if you need any powder coating. And number 9 would be this OEM fuel tank, because this is the one it came with. It was this big old Clark's tank. Honestly, the lines of this thing aren't bad, but I wanted that sleek look. When I went online trying to find some tanks, I did find a few, but they were all very expensive. Luckily, Patreon of mine, of all things, actually had one and sold to me for a very good price of 200 bucks. Next on the list is our Two Bros. Look, it's so little. I'm like, Two Bros carbon exhaust. Obviously, they don't make a Two Bros can for this bike. Two Bros will make you a pipe if you tell them what the in diameter is. You can hack yours off, and a carbon one like this should run you about 200 bucks. I think it looks so cool, all stubby. It actually sounds really good. It's got such a great sound. Ugh. Mine sounds better than that. It definitely has that big bore 650 sound. You can always touch it. It never gets that hot. Carbon does a really great job. It's good. I like it. And coming at the 7th most expensive thing on the list is the FMF Powerbomb. This bike's got the really cool thing where it's got an individual exhaust for each valve and recombines it in here. If you want a good exhaust flow, you want to make some power, you got to get a good header. You can't try to cheap out, which I learned about in this build when we tried to buy this thing for only 115 bucks. So I learned I'm not going to buy this exhaust in the future anymore. The funny thing is how there's some decent manual bins in here. Then you got things like this. Like what happened there? FMF combined with the Two Bros probably doesn't happen every day, but on this bike, it works well. And coming in at number 6, around $278, is the front and rear Continental Attack SM Evo. I've never had the Evo version of the SM. This is a new version of the Attack SM. It's supposed to give a little longer life, I believe. I've had Continental tires on my DRZ. I had Attacks on my WR a few times. The 701 Supermoto that we rode around for a week had Attack SMs. These are really, really good tires. They're Supermoto specific tire too. There's only a few people making a tire like that. And you can't cheap out on the tires. You can't do all this work, do the suspension, the brakes, everything we did to this thing. A bad tire will screw all that up. So the Continental tires, very nice. Now coming in at number 5, a big jump up at $799, is the Electron Fuel Carburetor Kit. It's a completely different type of carburetor. Now if you missed that episode, you should go back and watch it when we installed it, but if you want the quick rundown to it, the thing that the Electron does, one, it's completely jetless. Fuel circuits on there can just be adjusted, but most importantly, you won't have to rejet it because once the carburetor is set up correctly, changing in the temperature or the altitude doesn't affect this carburetor. That is a huge deal. Not even a lot of fuel injection systems on these bikes can claim to do that. Like my WR450, yeah, technically I have fuel injection, but it doesn't adjust to the temperature or to the altitude or anything like that. And this thing, nothing mechanically changes in it. It's just the way it works. It's able to cope with those situations. And it's got some wild technology with that flat rod on the back. The throttle response is really, really good. I can't believe it actually works as well without an accelerator pump. That's still another thing I'm trying to understand in my mind, is how basically a flat side style carburetor doesn't have an accelerator pump, but doesn't get a big old bog when you hammer the throttle open. It doesn't, it just rips. The only issue I had with it was idling. For whatever reason, right out of the box, I just couldn't ever get it to hold a decent idle. It seemed like it fluctuated around quite a bit. Electron did everything they could to fix this for me. They were sending me different parts, telling me the adjustments to make. The problem was my wife just had a baby and I was way too busy to mess with this bike. My brother actually happened to be going down to San Antonio for some business and offered just to take the whole bike with him. They're located right outside of San Antonio, I believe. So this bike actually went and stayed at Electron for about 2 weeks and they got it completely squared away. Now the bike fires up usually within the second kick. Usually the first one's kind of a primer kick with the choke on. It won't start, but it'll give a couple pops and then throw the choke off and it fires up. If it doesn't fire up after the second kick, it's just because I did something wrong. You really have to get the technique down on this bike or it's hard to start. I think what's really good to hear is they made a few changes on how they're setting these up for these bikes. And I know they're not just bending over backwards for me. There's actually a guy I've been speaking to on Instagram. He's got the same bike I do with the same carburetor. Now he contacted them without mentioning my name and said he was also having an idling issue, and they told him to send the carb in. They knew how to get it running right now, and they sent it back out to him, and it's good. You know, the thing with Lectron is they're a company that's been around for a long time, but they're basically under new management now, and they're trying to improve things and change things. Their customer service is super high. They want to make sure everyone's really happy. They know there's little tweaks and things. Sometimes they still have to adjust and get things just right, but they're dedicated to making sure that everyone's got a good product. I actually have a whole nother one right here along with a whole carb kit for a DRZ 400. I'm installing that on my brother's bike here real soon. It was a very popular bike for upgrading the carburetor to, so if you've got a DRZ and you're interested, or if you're just interested in seeing another 4-stroke Lectron carb installation review, that video is coming real soon. It's really a great product that makes this thing not seem like such an antique. And besides, it's got that clear float bolt, and we all know that's the real reason we want it, right? Coming in at number 4 at $850 is the Lunatic triple clamp steering stabilizer. This thing is a bit pricey for a steering stabilizer, but when you consider the fact that it's also upper triple, this great benefit that everything is internal. You don't have to have a big dampener up on top or below. You also have this really cool thumb switch to switch it on and off. But when you compare it to a normal steering stabilizer, and you think about the extra features it has, plus it's an upper triple, it's actually a really great deal. It's only like 20% more really. And we're not running it. Unfortunately, this is one of the parts that didn't end up making it on the bike. The most expensive part, the first thing was those headers. The problem we had was the clamp that went around the frame just seemed to twist on us no matter what we did. I went around the entire frame where the clamp would go and machine down any casting marks with a Dremel. The company really tried to get it to work too. They reached out to me initially. I never planned to run a steering stabilizer on my bike. It's something I don't have a whole lot of experience with. Honestly, I kind of like this looser feel sometimes you get with the Supermoto, especially when you're going hard into the turns and it's rough and the thing's kind of kicking around. I don't know how much a steering stabilizer would have helped. You know, unfortunately, like after 2 or 3 weeks of trying to get that clamp to set right, we just couldn't keep wasting more time with it, and I had to put the stock triple back on. But who knows, maybe they'll get that squared away at some point. Try it again. So coming in at the real number 4 at $899 is the Baja Designs Dual Sport Kit. This bike only had AC electronic stock front and rear, so once we upgraded the stator, Baja Designs kit does the rest from there. And it's a pretty cool kit. You end up with a keyed ignition, headlight, everything needed front to back, make this bike street legal. And as of just about 2 days ago, they no longer sell this kit. And honestly, you kind of get it at $899. That's kind of a lot for this kit. I mean, it's really good. Here's the things you're gonna get out of it. The installation is probably easier than any other dual sport kit I've ever put on. You know, I've made dual sport kits, I've installed some. This is so well put together, and the way all the components are behind the headlight right here, already on a board, super, super convenient. Everything is of really high quality. I mean, this headlight, almost 5,000 lumens, it's ridiculous. But it's also got like a 3-way adjustable dimmer to it. If quality and ease of installation are at the top of your priority, you won't find anything better than this. As price goes and value, God, that's just a lot of money. And I just don't think they were selling super great for them. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of these people buying these kits are taking old dirt bikes and trying to make them street legal. Now the good news is they still totally sell all the components. They even sell this headlight. You can get all this still. You just can't get it as a kit specifically made for your bike. And I guarantee if you called them and told them what bike you have and told them what you're trying to put together, they could let you know which parts and which harnesses to get. The biggest thing you'll have to do is try to find a place for them all. Maybe try to fit them behind the headlight. Maybe you have to make your own little, you know, metal board and behind it there. Baja Designs set us up with this kit. They make a lot of really cool stuff for other bikes. You know, if you already have a bike that has electronics on it and you're just trying to upgrade things, get things better, you obviously don't need to spend $899. For the CRF 450L, they've got one of these with another little half one above it. So you've got like over 6,000 lumens with that setup. They're definitely still in the motorcycle game, and you definitely still see these headlights on a lot of high-end tricked out modified bikes. Unfortunately, they just don't make the kit anymore. So coming in at number 3 at $1,000 is fully custom tuned suspension. The shop I had to do this is called SMS Racing, although now they're all out of Venture Moto. They're not just any average suspension shop, they're actually a WP licensed suspension shop. I mean, they do all kinds of suspension, but if you have WP suspension and you contact them and tell them you want your suspension to be custom tuned and they're the most local place to you, that's where they're gonna send you. But you know, a lot goes into that, having the suspension fully tuned, especially when this is old dual sport suspension on an old style. Nowhere close to what we needed. So I took the forks to them, took the shock to them. They got a ton of information from me, and they basically put a profile together, and then they ordered parts for this thing and they build it. I know there's a lot of cool trick stuff they do to the suspension as well. I wanted to kind of film some of that, but there's a lot of secrets and stuff that go along with that thing because I don't want another suspension shops to know about what they do. Really, really good. The front end fork is awesome. It's got great feedback. The back end doesn't squat out or anything weird. It actually feels very solid. I always feel like I can tell what this bike is doing. I know a lot of people said to me from the beginning, why don't you get a CRF fork and put it on here? Yeah, if I had bought a CRF fork and put the same custom work done to that as I did to this, would it be better? Yeah, of course it would. But it would have also costed me about, another $500 to $700 for a set of used forks, plus the custom upper triple you have to get. As you can see, there's already a lot of money spent on the bike. I knew that at the time. I know the stock forks, once they're custom built, will work just fine for me, especially since this bike is going to spend 99% of its time as a street Supermoto hooligan bike. Planning on going to the track here pretty soon. Unoften as that is, I just couldn't justify spending about close to another grand. For this purpose, this works just fine. I may end up putting a fork brace on here. I've been thinking about that. But otherwise, I'm really happy with the suspension, both front and rear on this bike. Coming in at number 2, at a cost of $1,260, was the front brake. But it is a awesome front brake. This is the MotoMaster kit. There's cheaper brakes options out there. MotoMaster makes it's just a simple relocation bracket if you just want to go that route with a big flame rotor. Even the Warp 9 kit comes with a relocation bracket and a little bit oversized rotor as well. Those will do you just fine. The problem is I've been spoiled now of riding bikes that have a big 4-piston caliper on it. I think particularly after I rode the 701 Supermoto, I knew the next one I built had to have just a monster brake kit on it. In order to make this work well, you gotta have things like really good tires and really good suspension, which we do. Fly in here. Before this video even started, I spent almost an hour trying to kill 2 flies in here. Remember that episode of the Breaking Bad where they tried to kill a fly all episode? That was me earlier, and I now appreciate that garbage episode. But anyways, it's not just about being ridiculously overpowered. They've really matched it well with a good master cylinder. So while the brakes are incredibly strong, they're not just overly grabby. You actually have really good control over them. An effortless, but like a great amount of control. You can one finger the stop this bike, no problem. I just need to be better at it. For sure, when we take this thing to the track, this brake is going to be absolutely awesome. It's right at that level of overkill, and I think when you talk about brakes, particularly the front brakes, overkill is awesome. The big problem with these dual sports when you convert them into a Supermoto is they just have such a small brake on them to start too. So any upgrade is incredibly helpful. Like I said, just going to a 320 rotor will do wonders for your bike. If you want to take it to the next level, you really want to look at something like one of these MotoMaster kits. Big thanks to MotoMaster for hooking it up with this brake system. Be sure to check them out as well. And coming in at number 1, if you haven't figured it out by now, at $1,290 is the Warp 9 Supermoto wheel kit. Obviously, we went all out with the colors on here, and that does make them a little more pricey. The colors, and as far as I'm concerned, is something you should probably go ahead and just spend the bucks on. You're not going to want to take these rims back apart later and go get them all anodized and powder coated. One of the big upgrades we did, though, that did add some cost to the bike was the Cush Drive hub on the back. Now, there's a lot of talk online, should you run a Cush Drive, should you not run a Cush Drive. This thing being a big old 650 single with no kind of dampening in the clutch basket, I thought, it probably would be helpful for the longevity of the machine to add that Cush Drive there. I will say this bike, for being a big old 650, for being something that you really do feel, you can feel the motor in this thing. It's a big old school 650, but regardless, it's actually really smooth riding it up and down the road. Everyone I've let ride it agrees it's really smooth, and I do contribute a good bit of that to that Cush Drive hub. I know like Deere Z400s and a lot of other bikes out there don't have one on their factory SM, so if they don't have it on the factory one, you're probably safe not to run it on the Warp 9, but if you want that extra level of smoothness, you want it to be, just want to help the longevity of your machine, it certainly won't hurt to add the Cush Drive. I think you've got a big old XR650R. I would do it. And that's the top 10 most expensive parts on the bike. I mean, in the end, I can say we have a super cool Supermoto bike. A few other quick things I'd love to mention about this bike is the tape that we put in for the rims. If you watch that episode, we don't run an inner tube. They're running tape inside there. They aren't losing any air. I really thought they might at this point, but I figured I'd probably have like a slow leak or something, but honestly, I don't. I think if you take your time applying it, it will work really, really good for you. The combination of oversized radiators, the fan, the 180-degree thermostat, this bike actually is running really nice and cool. I love the ease of the righteous stunt clutch. It's super nice. I think in a little while from now, when I get a little more time in it, I'd like to do a bigger review of the whole bike, kind of like a more long-term review. But so far, I've been absolutely loving it. The bike completely finished though. Probably there's a few little things I still would like to do to it. Do think we are gonna end up putting a graphics kit on the bike. Most of them just did not seem to be interested in trying to help me out with it. Not even just helping me as like a sponsor thing, just not interested in helping. Like when you ask them about trying to put a graphic shroud to the tank, most of them are just like, all right, use our software, figure it out. And had no interest in helping me. So I'm almost baffled at how ridiculous the aftermarket graphics company is. Most all the big ones have shocked me at being completely garbage with customer service. But the good news is, looks like we did find someone to work with here, and they're local. They already have a pretty big name in the aftermarket supermoto world. You'll be seeing that here soon. At the moment though, I'm pretty much satisfied with this thing. I'm happy as how it's turned out. I know it's a ridiculous price to put into an old XR650R, but you don't have to. I saw numerous XR650Rs, fully supermotoed, really nice, for around the $5,000 mark, so literally could have bought two. But it was really fun for me. I've never taken a bike that was just so garbage and bad and taken it up to such a cool level. I still come out here and look at this thing at night and think, holy shit, this bike is cool. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think I should do for another build? What would you like to see me do next? Your suggestions directly influence what we do, so let me know. Thanks for watching this ridiculously long XR650R build series. I bought a hat now, look, I'm a full Honda boy. Y'all take care. See you later.